Hi there, thanks for clicking on this video. I'm suspecting that you're here for one of these three reasons. 1. You're a subscriber, thank you so much. 2. You're genuinely interested in Yema and their watches, perhaps you'd like to look at this one. 3. You've had a bad experience with Yema and you might be about to share that in the comments. From my own internet forum journeys, few small brands seem to attract as many passionate commenters online, with stories about QA issues and not being able to return the watches if not purchased directly from Yema. I have to admit, it did make me hesitate, and I never bought one despite quite liking the look of the Superman in particular. This is my first in-hand Yema, and this has come about thanks to Yema reaching out to me asking if I'd be keen to borrow one to check it out for myself. They also suggested I should have a look at this particular model since it is a bit more unusual and has not been covered as much. Yema has had no input in the content of my video today, just for the record. So I thought for fun I would check out the larger of the two sizes available in this model. You can get it in 39 and also 41. And since I do my fair share of watches under 40, particularly of late, and there are always a few people that say I like it but it's a bit small, I thought I'd request a 41 and see how this sits on my wrist. So what we have here today is a reissue of the historic Yema Superman reference 24.11.17. An iconic military diver's watch used by the French Air Force aviation rescue swimmers in the early 1970s. You get a particularly cool logo on both the packaging and the back of the watch, which I'll cover later on. So let's get cracking. As I've alluded to, this is probably not the size watch that most people would go for, which makes it even more interesting to try on today. The lug width of this larger watch is 20mm, which I'll come back to. Lug to lug are measured 49.2mm, diameter is 41mm as discussed, but including the sizable crown is 46.6mm. Thickness is 13.3mm. Sized for my wrist and on bracelet, it weighs in at 148 grams. So let's jump into this ocean blue dial. It is indeed blue, like the oceans you'll likely see a bit of from your helicopter on your rescue mission. We have the Yema logo and all-encompassing Superman model reference in crisp print, and at just about the 6th position, automatic 300 meters water resistance written in French. I like when watch brands use their native language since it adds a bit of individuality, and even if you don't speak French, it's not too difficult to guess what's printed here. At the 3 position, we get a frame date, and I think the white looks pretty good here, and I'm not sure that a color-coded blue date wheel would help with the legibility, so good choice. The applied indices are a rather unusual U-shape, and since they have a distinct hard edge at the bottom of the U, they do catch the light quite well, which helps with the legibility. Much like Yema's website states, from certain angles it does look like the U sloped downwards towards the blue depths of the dial, which is a nice effect. Within these U's, you can also find a tiny dot filled with Superluminova BGW9, which annoyingly are not centered on a couple of these U's. You won't see this with the naked eye, but you also won't see this Lume dot for long with the naked eye either, which I'll cover later. With all that space, I think a thicker dot would have been a good move. The distinctly shaped hands do have plenty of lume and are easily legible against the dial. Particularly the minute hand is very easy to make out from a distance. The red dot on the seconds hand is a fun little surprise and is the only click of color other than blue. Overall, the hands are a good size without overpowering a dial that already has such distinct indices. The domed sapphire adds to the vintage feel, and those lovely distortions from an angle never get old. I'll also say that the AR coating is very good. You'll have no issues with reflections here at all. On the original watch, there's a glossy Bakelite insert on the bezel, but here we get an updated sapphire crystal bezel with a white on black insert, which will keep it from scratching, and it should look good for a long time. The one feature that I, and perhaps many of you, identify with Yema is the lockdown bezel. It is a normal unidirectional bezel that has a reasonably good feel, but of course you have to slightly unscrew the crown to loosen the locking mechanism. It's an additional way to lock down your bezel, ensuring that it simply will not move at all. I think it will be quite handy to have a bezel that turns in both directions here, since you already have a way to lock it down, and that's probably the only thing that I would change if I was asked, which I won't be. This locking mechanism is unique to the Superman model, and I think it looks good, and it's definitely a talking point to other watch people. It's probably not a detail that I would bring up at your next Tinder date, however. The large and well-protected crown is easy to grip and manipulate, and it's also signed with a great search and rescue logo, which takes us to this case. I love the thin angles and almost cage-like enclosure look to the rest of the round movement and dial. It's all high polish, which looks fantastic when you first receive it, but if you're a perfectionist that hates scratches, prepare to enter a world of pain. Flipping the watch over and you're met by the second example of a good looking logo and the issue numbers of your numbered edition. On the final watch you'll have a number out of 1000. Behind the screw-in case back, you'll find the Sellita SW200-1 Swiss movement with a 38-hour power reserve. This is a classic Swiss movement that you could get serviced easily in most parts of the world. The bracelet is interesting, with the first link after the lugs being so broad and how it's continuing the line from the lugs. This also means that they're not particularly flexible and don't fall off the edges of the lugs. So unless you have the wrist to pull off this larger model, I'd stay well clear. The H-links have polished and brushed details which look quite good, but will of course scratch easily. Yema offers both a signed rubber FKM strap and a NATO strap, and they would be my choice personally. That said, the pressed buckle has 4 micro adjusts and a diver's extension function, which might be handy for a wetsuit, but it's more likely something to fiddle with when watching Blue Panda 2 on the couch. So let's check out the Lume then. It's very strong on the hands, but other than that, a missed opportunity, since these dots do look really nice and would even more so with a thicker dollop of Superluminova. In the few weeks wearing this watch and inspecting it close, I've seen absolutely no proof of any QA issues or details not up to scratch. 1 or 2 slightly misaligned lume dots is extreme nitpicking and would not stop me from buying one. Despite being able to only just pull off the 41, I would choose a 39 myself, since the case design with its large crown and crown guards adds to the size a bit, and I also think it will be much more in line with the inspiration behind it. For me, a potential purchase comes down to whether you have a connection to France or search and air rescue, since if you do, this would be a no-brainer purchase. If you do not and simply like the look of this watch, you could do worse than spending $1,249 on a watch with plenty of heritage, a Swiss movement, and enough character to stand out from the rest of your watch collecting. Thank you again for being here, and I'll see you next time.